You feel as you don't belong. Do you know you were meant for something more? Well, you were. Knowledge of who you are and where you really are from is within your reach. Join Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin as they search for the answers as they open up the Stargate to the cosmos.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Stargate to the Cosmos. And I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is Debra DeFranco. You're listening to Revolution Radio Studio B. And we have a guest we're trying to get on here. Excuse me one moment. Neil Bauman. And he is a contact experiencer. He's been having contact with extraterrestrials for most, if not all, of his life. His UFO experiences span a wide range of things, from sightings of craft, paranormal activity, shadow people, lucid dream contact, physical healings, ESP, empathy, precognition, missing time, and much more. He says, through my personal experiences shared here, I will demonstrate how consciousness is the one common denominator that is fundamental to the contact modalities. They are the tools we use to connect with the universal mind. And I just heard from him that he can't get on, so we're going to have a different kind of show. But we'll try to get Neil on another time. Let's go say hi to each other, first of all, here. Debra, how are you doing today? Debra DeFranco's our producer.
I'm good. How is everybody?
We're pretty good, except we can't get our guest on, so we're going to have to try some other things today. Sasha, what did you want to say?
I'd just like to say that take your hats off if you wear a hat, because the Aceribo array, one of our most important feelers into the sky looking for objects that are heading for Earth, just collapsed.
What happened?
Well, Trump's been starving Puerto Rico and so forth, but the structure was really poor, but they were going to do all these repairs on it, and it all fell apart. It just collapsed, and it no longer exists.
Oh, wow. What's that called? The Aceribo array?
Aceribo, yeah.
Aceribo. Let me look.
Yeah, in Puerto Rico. But it was a huge thing, and out in the jungle, far away from all the people, and it's just.
I'm trying to bring up the article. So, what does that mean?
That means that we might not know when something's coming to hit us, and before we could know that it was coming to hit us.
So we're just going to get hit. We won't know what hit us.
It has a lot of other functions. It's one of our feelers into the sky. But it's. I'll tell you some research I was doing last night. This is the season about Christmas. When you buy our beer and stuff like that. But it's really much more than that. And what I was studying was the life of Jesus. And the political situation, and this thing about him being the Pauline doctrine was that he was a good Roman citizen. He never challenged Rome. It was all about the bad Jews and so forth. But that was just Paul trying to sell Christianity to the Romans so they wouldn't persecute the Christians. But James, who ran the other side of Jesus' followers in Jerusalem, and all the Jews were just under the yoke of these terrible Romans who were just killing people and ripping them off, and to think that Jesus wasn't political is just to not really understand the situation. Everybody was political, and that was his movement was to free everybody from the Roman system of domination consciousness. And I think that's a really important, interesting thing that I was studying. What do you folks think about that?
Debra, any comments on what he just said?
Wasn't Jesus part of the Essene sect, correct?
Yes, that's the whole thing.
Right.
His teacher was John, who was a great rabbi and teacher of the Essenes, and that's exactly right on. He was definitely about, and you should see the caves in the area where and Jesus wasn't born in Bethlehem. That's nonsense. He's from Galilee. But it's riddled. The caves are all over up and down these canyons, and that's where the Essenes hung out. That's.
So the story about him. Go ahead, Debra.
The Essene philosophy was actually the foundation for Christianity, correct?
Absolutely. These are people, and these are people that knew Jesus. So that's really very different. That whole tradition is from people that directly knew the great rabbi. He was married to Mary Magdalene. She was his wife. It was just automatic in those days, and the story has been just painted in Paul's version to make it so that they're good Roman citizens. They would not ever think about challenging Rome and the system of money exploitation and commercialism, which Rome had imposed upon and actually taken over the temple, and they had and imposed a king who they did not regard as king. And Jesus was. Peter told Jesus, you're the Messiah. That means the anointed one who should be king of Israel, because you're a direct descendant of David, not like Herod. And when Jesus felt strong enough, he was coming to town with his followers, and it was political. It was, we are going to free ourselves from these people that are ripping us off and imposing their ways on us.
Well, one of the things that I found fascinating with the philosophy of the Essenes, that women were held in high esteem, and they were actually on equal footing with men, which is a direct opposite of what the Roman Catholic Church said Christianity was, correct?
Oh, that is so critical. It's like, and I think it was the doctrine of the Valentines, where, Sophia, it wasn't just they're equal, it was they bow to feminine wisdom.
Well, apparently, when Mary's mother was born, when Mary conceived, Mary's mother conceived Mary through an Immaculate Conception type of intervention. Our theory is that these are extraterrestrial interventions, just like they're doing today with the modern abductees, contactees. They're creating these hybrid children, and they wanted to have these children of the lineage to be the demigods, the ones that they left the rulership of the earth to. And so these are your kings and your queens and your priests and priestesses. And so Mary was given to the temple when she was like 2 or 3 years old. She was just a little toddler. And when she was taken there, an angel descended, or angels descended. I don't have the whole story here. It's in the lost books of the Bible. Had I known we were doing this, I would have looked that up and been able to read that to you. But so she was trained to be, the mother of this Messiah.
That's right.
In the next generation. So this is the part that didn't get included in the original Bible. It's in the lost books of the Bible. It's a much deeper story of these beings that had higher powers. When Jesus was a young boy, they of course escaped to Egypt to avoid getting him assassinated, killed. And so down there in Egypt, he was playing with these little clay figures, and he was able to animate them and bring them to life. And then there's another story in the lost books where somebody came and upset Jesus, and he basically struck him dead. And so
he was another kid. He got in a fight.
He got in a fight, but he with his superpowers of some kind, the kid was dead, and so Joseph came and grabbed Jesus by his ear. So that's probably one of the first ear draggings we see in history, and was you got to make this right. So apparently he did make it right and brought the kid back to life. So this goes all the way back to these stories, and it's a fascinating series if you can ever find it and read it about these lost books of the Bible. But
how many lost
books article.
Are there?
Apparently, there's a whole encyclopedia. We don't have all the stories.
I've heard there was as many as 150, but when you research it, you can't find details of that many of the how do you say it? Apocryphal books, right?
Yeah. Right. So so the lost books was probably, I don't know, 30 of the short stories, and it talks about how Jesus is wet cloth from his urine. If you touched his cloth, you could get healed. So there was some kind of so let's look at that. There's a story. What is in this child's excrements that would bring about people getting healed? Is it some kind of element from its body? Is it belief? What do you think? Anybody?
I've heard that he was a direct descendant. He was a direct descendant of the Anunnaki. That the whole virgin birth thing was a lie, and that his mother was actually impregnated with an Anunnaki hybrid, and that's what he was.
Yes, I think you're right. I think that's exactly right. Yes.
Okay, so Neil said he's on. Are you able to see Neil? He finally got his Skype going. Debra, are you able to see Neil? Debra?
Oh, sorry, I was muted. Give me just 2 seconds and let me try and bring him in.
Bring him to transporter and beam him in. Okay. You see him? Okay, so anyway.
And so other things, this is how you can look at history and see how Mary was indeed, Magdalene was the wife of Jesus because she was able to claim his body, and only the wife can claim a body. She was his publicly recognized wife.
Right, then if you see the wedding... Go ahead, Debra.
Did you guys see the documentary that James Cameron did on the location of Jesus's tomb, his family's tomb?
Wow, no, it sounds interesting.
Okay.
I'd love
there is a video out on YouTube that is done by James Cameron and this other gentleman who is a religious archaeologist, and his name is on the tip of my tongue and I cannot remember it. Anyways, they believe they found the tomb of Jesus's family. And the Israeli authorities have now shut it down so nobody can get into it. But they found, what are the containers that they put the remains in? There's a name for the ossuaries, right? They found the ossuaries, with inscriptions where it said Mary, wife of Jesus, right? And it said Jesus, brother of James and son of Joseph. Mm-hmm. And the same thing. There was all these inscriptions and it all fit in his bloodline. It's very, very interesting. I advise anybody to go out there and look at it. Just Google James Cameron and Jesus's tomb. And I think it's about an hour and a half long. And it's a fascinating documentary.
Wow.
I tried to bring Neil in and he did not answer again.
Okay, let me see what's going on. Let's keep talking about Jesus. It is the season. So then, Were you there when we had, no, I don't think you were with us when we had Glenn Bogle. I'm going to try to get him on. We have him on every year, and he's an Anunnaki researcher, and he has information that he believes that Jesus is Enki and Mary is Ninmah, the Anunnaki, and that he did not die. Has anybody exhumed the tombs that were found? Yeah, we don't know the whole story there, but that he actually, is just an Anunnaki, and they can fake their death, or they just leave. They're so long-lived that they go from town to town. They're immortal. They live hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years, and then humans are so short-lived they never realize what's going on, that there's these characters that are the immortals that walk among us. So he's alive and well, and still running some things. Right now, I guess Marduk is in charge, and so we've got the backstory on that. Who's in charge right now? Did Nanar take over, or is Marduk still in charge?
I think that going back to the original story that I've been tracking is that when Jesus recovered from his wounds, he was hidden in a cave for a while, and after a while he near the scene, and his Mary Magdalene went to Marcella with their kids. They had 2 kids, and when Jesus recovered, he and his mother Mary started to walk over land toward the Indian subcontinent, and Mary died in Afghanistan. There's a shrine to her there, and Jesus became a advisor to the rulers of the Afghan area, and he lived to a ripe old age, and he led the resistance to authoritarian the whole Roman. He basically was locked into trying to free humanity, and he traveled in our sources say in a flying saucer to North America. He was seen among many of the tribes. He would get people together and train people, and it's like we have a lot of information. Currently, basically, Gillian Green says that he is part of the gang that came with Thoth and Enki to bring in the Aquarian Age and to control Marduk. And Marduk is sorry for the Janet, it has been Marduk who's been in charge, but he was challenged by Nanar or Allah. But that's all over now. They're all into cooperating, so they say, to help us evolve to the next level. And we have help not just from people in the Galactic Federation, but a special alliance that believes that this non-interference thing is dumb, and they're going to do something to save us quick.
Research from all the people that come on this show, it seems like everybody's fighting each other in the universe, but there are many who are reporting that these intergalactic beings are friendly. They're not like us. They're not in this veil of separation and forgetfulness. They know who they are as eternal beings. They're millions of years old. They're conscious, and they're looking at us, like these are our babies, and they're trying to walk and talk, and we're falling down, and we're seeing each other as invisible demons in the night, and we're hitting at each other, and but we're really unconscious, and they're doing what they can to help us awaken. But there's a difference between being woke and being conscious. What is the cat? Somebody's staring down the house. So anyway, I'm going to go make sure there's something. Okay, keep talking. I'll be right back. Somebody's not.
So, Dr. Lessin, one of the things I found interesting was that they removed the chapters of the Bible stories about Jesus from the age of 16 to 35. And in my research, I'm not sure
that's when
because I've never been able to validate it, that he was traveling the world, right? And studying
yes, he was.
different.
He was in Tibet, and he was in Benares, He was studying the works of the Buddhas,
Yes.
and talking to other people, and then he got in big time trouble with the priests, the Brahmins, because he was hanging out with the poor people, and they're really racist, and there was a plot to kill him, and he was warned, and he had to split. But that's during the missing years. That's what he was doing. He was talking to the smartest people, the most evolved spiritual people in the world.
And he believed in reincarnation, right? He preached that doctrine because the Essenes believed in reincarnation as well.
Absolutely. That's once you are really open to reincarnation, you see that there's nothing in the human condition that's alien to any of us, and we've all done it all and been it all, and we have the guilt and the joy of our ancestors in us, and we have to realize we're all of it, and all humanity is us, and just love each other.
I read this story. Oh, I'm sorry, Janet. What?
Go ahead. You read this story, then
I read
something reincarnation.
I read this story about Jesus that he used to preach that he didn't have special powers, not any different than the rest of us, that we could all do what he did.
Yes, that's the same thing that the Buddha kept saying. That's right. There it is. Go inward. And basically he's saying you don't need a priest and you don't need to give him a bunch of bucks. All you got to do is go inward and meditate. And that's what all the teachers in every tradition, there's been prophets in every tradition that have come to the same conclusion. If you reflect, then you start to get non-dualistic. You start to be able to be spiritual, but still take care of the material in a spiritual way. You walk the spiritual path with material feet, so to speak.
And it goes circle. You come to the place you started, right?
That's right.
Yeah, you keep coming around, but you see it with new eyes. So each time you see the same thing with a different perspective. And that's how we become wise.
Yeah, your sense of self gets bigger and bigger and bigger until you realize that there's no separation between your self and your not self. And but you still have all the smaller fractals within you, and you can have the power to coordinate them by embracing the opposites within you and being aware that the apparent opposites outside of you are really just reflections of who you are too. And that's the way you transcend dualism.
So what I want to say about reincarnation is actually Ningishzidda, Thoth or Thoth, however you pronounce it, Ningishzidda. He wanted to come down into physical form. So he was able to put his body, he learned this from the Watchers or the Galzu. There's an advanced race that has like an observation center. It's within each spherical body in the universe, and they watch as life grows and evolves, and how it gets mixed in, different beings come in and delivery systems, comets and whatever, deliver different life forms into a part of the galaxies, and then these things evolve and grow and eventually come to a level of consciousness. And so the Earth has been observed since its creation, so billions of years, and these Watchers are here. And Thoth discovered them. He was exploring the Earth, and he went all over the place, and he discovered it, and it's called the Halls of Amenti. And the Halls of Amenti were these advanced beings, and it's much like the early Star Trek episode where they no longer need physical form, but they could show themselves in physical form, so that, and that's currently what we can do. When we get to our highest level of existence, we are without form, but we can learn how to coalesce our molecules, so to speak, in form and appear however we want to appear. So he appeared into a form. They appeared in a form that was pleasant for Thoth to witness, to not freak him out. And so they liked him, and they said, "Oh, we think that you would make a great acolyte. So would you like to study with us?" So he started to study with them, and he learned how to do the same thing, to project himself out into the universe and travel through time and space. So we don't need technology. We don't need a ship. We don't need to learn how to go faster than light. We can, just like the Moody Blue said, thinking is the best way to travel. So he's traveling out there, and they're studying with him, and it's kind of beyond in time and space, and he gets to the point where he really wants to understand humanity, and so he agrees to come into form, and the best way to do it, he's like the Jesus story, so he came down through physical form. So he's known as the thrice-born Hermes, and you can find the stories of Hermes in books that are written about him, and there's some statues. And so, it's not like reincarnation where you go unconscious, because he knew who he was coming down, and he experienced, being born and being suckled at a mother's breast and growing up, and then he would depart for a while, and then he came back at another time. So that's a fascinating story on reincarnation. But at the Fifth Ecumenical Council of Nicaea, they decided to remove any references to reincarnation. But there's some things that were left there, like Melchizedek. He was a being without mother, without father, eternal being. So they left these mysteries in there, which seems like they didn't have a very good editor. But anyway, that was brought to light by Edgar Casey, and he's to discuss reincarnation back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. What do you want to talk about?
Well, it's interesting. If you imagine your soul could sort of float around the globe, and you fly, like it goes over England, and it goes over Russia, and it goes over China and Australia and so forth. And notice as you fly over the globe in your mind, if any places that you're attracted to or ones that you're repelled by. And then if you wanted to really hone in, you could either go to one you're attracted to, or even more adventurously, go to one that you're scared of. And when you're there, you just imagine. And if you start to imagine, it turns into something real. Even though you're starting out as a fantasy, imagine that you're wearing feet different than the ones you had, and you start to see your body and get a sense of what this person looks like, and imagine that person is you, and something is about to happen, and you can let it happen. And if you start thinking that way, and it's that kind of a meditation, I wouldn't be surprised if you tune into some past lives and learn what scripts are still running in your life, and which people from your past are still enacting dramas with you that are part of a script that the two of you share.
So, Debra, do you remember any past lives, or are you drawn to any particular time or, foreign country, anything?
No, I've been told by multiple psychics that this is my first and only time on this planet. That I came from, I've experienced past life regression several times, and the only thing I could see was bright light. And this was 30 years ago. And at that point, they weren't aware of souls who had never reincarnated on this planet, and it was rare to come across them. And now it's more common. And I thought I was being ripped off when I did the past life regressions, because the person, actually the therapist doing the regression, couldn't explain why all I could see was bright light. And when they brought me out of the regression, I had visions of the future, but I had no connection to the past. And what I've been told, I don't know if this is true, and I haven't been able to validate it, but I kind of suspect it is because of my role here on Earth now, is that I worked in Source and helped people facilitate what their next life was going to be. I helped them put their plans together. And here I always say that what I've been here is a catalyst for change, right? I'm always pushing people to do what's next and chase their dreams and step outside their comfort zones, right? To really embrace life and experience life and stop living a life of fear. And so I wonder, now that I've played that role here, that's similar to the role that I was playing in Source. But apparently I answered the call. When they put out the call for souls to come to this planet, I decided I wanted to experience this life. And that's why there were no past lives for me. And my only reason to be here is to help people get through the trauma that's coming.
Well, that's very interesting on a couple levels. The Dr. Michael Newton Institute says that there are people on the other side that help people decide their future lives, their next incarnation. And so what happens is somebody, there's coaches and they help them narrow it down to, let's say 3, 4, or 5 scenarios. And then they get to actually try those lives on. What would it be like to be that boy or girl in that country and that skin in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years? And then the coach, the counselor, is with them the entire time. They're trying these on and helping them to figure out, is that where they want to go? Is that where they're going to get their best opportunities to learn the lessons they need to learn? And then eventually when they choose the final one, apparently there's like a ritual and everybody gathers around and they say goodbye to you and you get smaller and smaller and smaller until you're like in an egg. It's like you go back to egg form, and then you find yourself coming down into the fetus and then through the birth canal, and then you're born, into the current lifetime. So, I don't know how true that is, but it seems to be what thousands of people access when they go into their future lives, which goes to the in between lives. So, I'll tell you one. Remember, I had this memory. This goes back to when I'm a child. I'm very young. I'm a toddler, and I dreamed I was being chased by. I was male. I was being chased by a bunch of soldiers. I pieced it together since I had the mystery, and I saw movies and stuff. I think it was the storming of the Bastille. And I through time I've done some like self-regression and talking to other people. And so we were kind of outside the city and renegades in the woods. And the soldiers found us and came in and killed everybody. And I was away, came back. I saw that everybody was dead. I was on a horse. So I went back to there was the woman I was in love with was missing. So I went back to the town, and somehow I found out that they had captured her, and they were going to behead her. And so I was heading to wherever this place was. I wish I could find like a map of the city during the time of the Bastille, but it was somewhere where they did the guillotines, beheadings. And so, they discovered me, and so I remember running up the stairs of the Bastille, and I went off to the side, and there was a spiral staircase, and every time I tried to come out on a different floor, there were troops on, soldiers on both sides, and so I get to the very top level, and I was surrounded. And so I was very athletic, and so there was this guy that I called Nemesis. He was the head of the troops, and he came and he has a fencing sword, and so I leap up like in a single bound on this rail, and I'm like a gymnast, and I can go back and forth on this rail, and I don't fall, and I'm very agile, and I'm fighting him, but then I realized he's going to eventually capture me, and they'll just torture me, and then, I won't be dead, and so I'd rather be dead than captured and tortured. So I saw in the course of the fight that there were these tapestries. I thought, well, if I just leap and get on this tapestry, I can, glide all the way to the ground and perhaps escape. But when I leapt from the rail, I didn't make it, or the tapestry ripped or something, and then I was falling to my death. And before I hit the ground, I decided to leave my body. And when I left my body, I saw my best friend who had been killed in the forest, and I saw the woman that I was trying to rescue. So, fast forward to this life, I met the characters of that play later. The man was a lover of mine, and so I was female now to his male, and he was male this life, and we remembered it. That's how we, and he was fencing. He was doing those recreation dramas, the historical recreation things, and he was dressing just like he was back at the story of the Bastille, and he was doing these Renaissance things that they recreate these costumes and everything. And that was in Honolulu. And then when I was married to my second husband, one day he just started like grabbing his throat, and I had touched his throat, and he says, "Oh, I don't like you. Don't touch me there. Don't touch me there." And then it just came back to me, and I said, "Oh, what did I say?" He said, "Did you lose your head?" And he went, and he did, everything came back, and he remembered, and he got mad at me. He says, don't talk about that. Don't ever talk about that again. Anyway, so that was kind of circumstantial and allegorical, but it was like, for me, it was like enough information to kind of validate that this thing that I got was actually a potential of something that was real. What about you, Sasha? Do you remember any past lives?
Yeah, one of the most interesting ones to me is where you can see a script. Is I was in a village in Russia, and I was telling all my relatives and the people in this little sub village called the Shtetl, look, we got to get along with the Russians. You got to stop acting like they're superior, and we should party with them and so forth. And now you want to hear that shit. I'm still doing that, and so I realized that's my. I've been working for trying to. I have the tools to bring people who seem very diverse and at odds together. I learned how to do that. I studied how to do that. I know how to do that for couples. I know how to do that for nations, and so does anybody that's studied the Carl Rogers methods, where you get people to just talk about their lives as human beings, and pretty soon they feel for each other and they can work anything out.
So how did you die? Is that the one when you got killed?
Oh, that was another part of that. That was nobody listened to me. And sure enough, the Russians, especially the Cossack guys, came and beating people up and killing people and so forth. And so the story goes on. It doesn't matter. But that was the point. I just wanted to.
But did you get killed by the bear?
Yeah, but that's not the part of that I was telling you. The story.
I want to hear about the bear.
Okay, so when we were escaping through the woods toward the west, and a bear came out. I was with my wife and my little girl, and I knew that people didn't stand a chance against this beast. But I took 2 staves, and I told my wife and kids to run, and I committed altruistic suicide by stalling the bear while they got away. And then in the extension of the past life, where you sort of see what happens, they got sheltered and integrated into another family, and they made it across the border to Belarus.
Oh, okay. So that was a past life tied in with your ancestors from this life.
Yeah. So
I guess we tend to reincarnate in lineages, or we can.
That's one of the ways, but like I think as Barry Gillis was saying, we've had we wink in and out of existence continually, and we're able to access any human experience. They're all our lives. Yeah, and the life you're living, Debra, might be really just a past life of some part of you that's already past this. Do you ever think of that?
No, I've never considered that.
You might be a past life, because when you throw away our intellectual conception of time, and you think like Barry thinks about it, where you wink in and out. Wink. It's only when you're conscious do your molecules assemble. When you're not there, they're not assembled. They're waves, not particles.
Right. Go ahead.
I have always wondered. Like, I've never had any connection to any past life. I have no connection to any country. I'm not drawn to anything. And I've always known who I was, even as a child. And I remember as a child getting so angry that adults were telling me I was this and I was that, or I like this and I have always known who I am. That has never shifted in me, not ever. And I recognize.
What did you choose these parents? What made you choose this family?
Can I tell you, I tried to figure that out because I have nothing in common with my family. Absolutely nothing. But maybe I'm starting to understand if my mission here is to help people through trauma. I've lived a very traumatic life at my own hands and at my family's hands, right? And how can you help people through trauma if you've never experienced it? And I have nothing in common with my family. They just think I'm this giant whack job. They think my beliefs about our existence, about our human origination, about psychic abilities, they think it's all crazy, right? It's all just hocus pocus, you're a nut job, stay away. And my daughter has never been religious. Most of my family is secular for the most part. My mother was very religious when we were younger in the Methodist church, and she was a Bible school teacher. And when I was a child, my father had a heart attack, and everything that played out with that made my mother leave the church, and she lost her faith in God. And to this day, she has never recovered it. And so we never went to church. God was never talked about in our house. Spirituality was never talked about in our house. And we were all allowed to choose our own path. I chose a path because of my psychic abilities that I've had since I was a child. I recognized I was different than everyone else. And I chose the path of pursuing this. I started studying about Jesus on my own when I was like in my late teens, probably 16, 17, 18. And was floored by the information that I found. Everything I asked you about today were things that I found, but I've never been able to validate them, right? Because it's very difficult to find sources that can validate these concepts from so long ago. But these concepts resonate with me, right? Because I remember being a child and being in the church and being in Bible school, and I would listen to these stories. And then there would be contradictions and things that wouldn't make any sense. And I would ask questions as a small child, like 6, 7, 8 years old. And I was always dismissed and poo-pooed. And that upset me a lot as a child because I had reasonable questions and no one could ever answer them. To this day, no one can answer my questions. I often get into conversations with evangelicals. And they tell me, oh, you're a sinner because you don't go to church and this and that. And I'm like, well, Neanderthals didn't go to church. And you're going to tell me they all went to hell, right? And then I'm like, where in the Bible does it say church has 4 walls and a roof? And not one of them can ever answer that question, right? Because it doesn't. Your body is your temple, and that's what it tells you. And like you said, you go within, right? If you want a particular life, you go within and you manifest it. And because we have become so disconnected, we are all connected. All of this is connected. But the life we live now in this physical universe, we're taught is disconnected and isolated, and there's nothing after this. And that's so wrong. My daughter and I started talking about it. She started having some trauma. And she goes, I feel like I don't know where to turn. I said, you have no faith in anything. She goes, death terrifies me. She goes, it doesn't scare you. And I said, no, because I know this isn't the end. You know, I'm teaching my grandchildren about ghosts and other spiritual beings that exist in other dimensions. And at first it disturbed my daughter. But I'm like, Brianna, this isn't the end. This is just the end of this physical presence at this moment on earth. But we continue on. And now I'm excited to find out what that journey looks like, right? Once we pass from this life, knowing this isn't the end. And I know it's not the end. I remember nursing my father as he was dying of cancer, when he was bridging the dimensions and the worlds and speaking with people who had already passed. And you know, when you talk to nurses and doctors, if you get them away from their coworkers, they will tell you stories that will make the hair stand up on the back of your neck. And they will tell you there's something more, right? They can't tell you what it is, but from what they've seen of the dying and the sick, they know there's something more beyond what we've been taught. And so now I'm trying to pass this knowledge on to my daughter. I've been teaching my daughter about manifestation, that there's no accidents, right? There's no coincidences,
That's
right? And she's actually been doing some manifestation exercises, and the results are shocking her. And so we've started to have a lot of these more in-depth conversations. And, you know, I want to teach my grandchildren my beliefs. I don't want to impose them on them, but I want them to know that there's alternative ways of thinking, and they get to choose what they want to embrace.
Absolutely.
Right on. Yeah, that's great. Wow.
Yeah, that's a manifestation is in existentialism. We assume that everything we have is that we experience, we have created for our own growth and understanding. And if it's something that looks like it's junk, that just means you got a big challenge and it gets your attention. And so if you start with that assumption, I created what I'm experiencing right now, that means that everybody and everything that you're experiencing right now is you.
Yes.
And
yes. And you know, you asked me, why did I pick this family? I think I picked this family to teach me to stand on my own feet, to think for myself. I have had to fight my family to allow me to have my own opinions and to believe in something different than what they believe in. And I've paid a very high price for that. And I will speak my mind, and not be afraid, you know, and I will speak up when others are afraid to. And I'm not afraid to do it. And I know when there might be traumatic change on this earth, like I suspect that we are going to learn in the next couple of years about truly have proof that there are other species in our solar system and in our universe. And when that happens, there's going to be a lot of trauma. People are going to be traumatized because they're going to recognize that everything they were taught was a lie, right? So how do you shed the shell of that lie and relearn what the truth is without it devastating you psychologically?
Well, what they've been saying is that for the past 50, 60 years, we've been learning through our entertainment what's really going on. So they've been, you know, preparing us. We started back, I guess the first one that was really an educational movie was The Day the Earth Stood Still with Michael Renning, and it was about a intelligent extraterrestrial who came with his guard, his giant android named Gort, and they were like the interstellar police, and they weren't going to let humans out into the galaxy or into space until they got rid of nuclear weapons and set everything aside. And once they did, and I think that's the story of Eisenhower. You know, his meeting he had in 1954 with extraterrestrials. He was given the opportunity of having all the advances in in technologies and green, clean energy systems and cures for all diseases, but they had to set aside the nuclear war and stop the devastation. So, but I agree with you. I think something's coming, and I can kind of feel it. So you're very psychic. So you're saying this. Is there some kind of indicators that you're getting besides just the thought? Is it a feeling? Help.
There was some time last summer when I started getting premonitions, right, of something that's coming. I believe there's going to be another flood that will be on biblical proportions. I believe the flood that happened 12,500 years ago happened because of crustal displacement, right? You know, they have found archaeological evidence that showed tropical animals, right, in freezing climates like the Antarctic, and the exact reverse of that. And supposedly the crust of the earth shifted 1,000 miles almost instantaneously. And in my research, and I don't know if this is true, but there was, I don't know if it was an asteroid, but something happened. There was a time almost 13,000 years ago when the ice caps were in the same condition they are now. They were destabilizing and they were melting, right? And then something hit the planet and it caused an instant melting of these caps. And that relief of the pressure of the caps on the land caused the crust of the earth to shift 1,000 miles, right? And that's what caused things to literally be frozen in place or buried in mud in place and to show up on a place in the planet where it didn't make sense. And so I believe something similar like that is going to happen again. I don't think the entire world is going to be flooded. I was getting visions of places that won't be flooded. Like there'll be 3 places in this country that will not be flooded. I actually have a map where I've drawn those areas out. And there will only be one continent that won't be touched by this. And that continent will be Antarctica. I mean, not Antarctica, will be Australia, where one of the most oldest cultures on the planet still exists, right? The indigenous people there. They have a history that's over 60,000 years old, which was pre-flood. But if you look at all the Native American tales, they all have flood stories. And often a lot of the legends in the Native American communities are that they came from the ground, right? After the flood, they emerged from the ground. So I believe that's going to happen again. And I believe it's all part of this whole new earth concept. You know, people toss that around a lot, and I'm not sure how much of that is real or how much of that is just storytelling. But I believe there's some element of that that is going to happen, and there's going to be tremendous trauma across the land, right? And that's one of my purposes here, is to be able to help people through the trauma, to be able to stand up. Like my cage is not rattled, hardly ever. And I've realized I've lost all fear. And I think I've said this to you guys again before. You know, life has thrown every possible traumatic thing that could happen to a human being at me, and I'm still here, and I'm okay. And that has caused me to lose all of my fear. I don't fear death because I know it's not the end. And again, that caused me to, used to be terrified of death when I was a child, and I've lost that fear, and I don't live in fear anymore. I'm also not, I don't believe in organized religion, but I'm highly spiritual, right? And I talk to what I call the spirit realm, not necessarily God, but I believe, you know, the spirits exist in a realm where, what I call source. And so I have conversations with the spirits all the time. And, you know, and I walk in a state of grace. I constantly say thanks for the good things that happened. I manifest things when I want them, and they happen. I often have premonitions of the future when things are going to happen. I had a premonition about the earthquake in San Francisco that happened back in, what was it, the late 80s, early 90s, something like that?
Oh, yeah.
Right. I had a premonition the night before it happened, and I was living in Los Angeles, and I had only been to San Francisco 1 or 2 times prior to that. And in my dream, I'm driving down the 10 freeway in LA, and I don't know if you've ever been in an earthquake, but when you're driving and an earthquake hits, the back of your car fishtails, right? And you feel it moving. And in my dream, this happens, and I'm driving down the 10, and for those that aren't familiar with LA, the 10 freeway rides perpendicular to downtown LA. So my car is fishtailing, I'm looking around, and the same thing's happening to everybody else, and we all stop and get out of our car, and we look over, and we can see fires and smoke coming from downtown LA. But when I look at it, it's not downtown LA. I'm sitting in LA, but that downtown isn't LA, and I didn't recognize the skyline in my dream. And when I wake up that morning, I'm terrified because I knew that was a premonition, and I call my mom. And I'm like, Mom, I just thought LA was going to get hit with an earthquake, right? And I told her that. And she goes, look, just be careful. What? Oh, sorry.
The music's coming.
You continue.
Earthquake Part 2 when we return. See you in 5.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take freedom!
The future is uncertain. I know this. Death is inevitable. I know this. But one thing is certain. As free men, it is our right to live unencumbered and in peace. And those times are quickly drawing to an end. And in these times, peace is certainly an illusion. And as the chains grow tighter, our ability to slip those chains increase incrementally with every passing moment. Inaction is no longer an option. It's time to raise our voices like a cacophony of thunder and lightning and tell the masters no more. And this is Nighthawk, and I say, for myself, no more. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, because the freedom is slipping away.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically atomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday, 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
Did you ever feel that things were not quite right? That everything was just ever so slightly askew?
Do you have, to paraphrase Morpheus, a splinter in your mind?
If you're interested in hearing the latest information about UFOs, the paranormal,
ancient cultures and structures,
monatomic elements,
longevity,
fantastic discoveries in science,
downloaded to your brain,
then tune into us. Hi, I'm Dave.
And I'm Mackie.
And we are Shiny Side Out, Sundays 2 to 4 a.m. Eastern. See you then.
Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. All right. Thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Aloha. Welcome back to Stargate to the Cosmos. I'm Kira Lessin here with Dr. Sasha Lessin and Debra DeFranco. And, excuse me. And we're having an interesting conversation. Before we get back to our show, I'd like to remind everybody to please go over to revolution.radio to the donation button at the top left. You can do your one-time donation there. And on the top, I think it's to the right, is the Patreon button. And you can make your recurring donation. And we do thank you very much for all your donations because you allow us to bring these shows to you. We have a good time doing them. So, Sasha.
Okay, there's a few things that we have left going here and there, but what I was left with most of all was this: the Anunnaki, of course, talked about essentially they could tell they were observing this coming down. They knew something was Nibiru was coming, and the perigee, the closeness to Solaris, was going to be really close this time. Nibiru passes between Mars and Jupiter in those days every 3,600 years. They knew it was coming. They had a weather station down at the point Arguelles, which is at the point of South Africa, and it was run by Nergal. They known it as Hades by the Greek. And so he ran this station there, and he was sending all the scientific data all the time. And they said, and the reports kept coming in. Look, the ice cap is melting on top of Antarctica, and there's these gigantic glaciers that are starting to roll toward the sea, and they're huge. And so the boss, Yahweh, Enlil, basically called all the Anunnaki, the Nibirians, together and said, "Don't tell the Earthlings about this, or they'll mob the state, our getaways, and we won't be able to get out. And I'll kill anyone who tells us, I want, and besides that, I want all these Earthlings to die anyway. It's an illegal species, and I want them all dead." But of course, Enki gave his son Noah computer plans how to make a submersible, etc. But you know that story. But the point is that there was something coming down. The Anunnaki knew it. They had been preparing for it, and and even calculated what it would take for the submersible to land, and how many days it would take. And they had a guy, Ninmah, the son of Enki, to actually guide this thing. And also all the Ijiji, the watchers, the hybrids were ordered. Look, you could come back to Nibiru or get off the island, or you could go to a high place, and you got your choice. And as far as when the leaders of the Anunnaki were about to say, well, we better get out of here too, one of the ships that came to take gold was left away, off comes this guy called Galzu, and he's got this scroll, and he says, "Hey, I'm speaking for King Anu. I'm his plenipotentiary, and he says, you guys, listen, royalty, you got Enlil, Yahweh, you got to stay here, because if you come back, if you leave Earth, you've been here too long, you'll die. Just orbit around the place or go up on the moon or Mars until the danger is past." And so it goes on like that. But they knew it was coming. The Hopi and the Zuni tell me that the Ant people came and took them to Sedona until then for several hundred years they gathered up survivors from the flood, and then they went in the saucers to the Four Corners where they now live. And so it goes all over the world. This was exactly like you said, Debra. It was something huge and massive and totally There's seashells on top of the Andes.
There's seashells on top of Sedona. And so before we took the break, you were talking about the earthquake. So, and then you saw the cities in San Francisco. Yeah, the cities were on fire, right?
Well, I saw what I thought was downtown LA on fire, but when I looked at the skyline, I could see the fire and smoke, but it wasn't the LA skyline. And I couldn't identify what the skyline was. So I call my mom and I tell her, and she's the only one I ever tell about my premonitions. And she just tells me to be careful, go to work, just play it safe and be, very aware of where you're going in case an earthquake does happen, because she has seen my premonitions come true. And so that day, towards the end of the afternoon, the earthquake hits. And we all jump under our desks, and then once it passes, we go into the conference room and turn on the TV, because I could tell it didn't hit from LA. I'd been through multiple earthquakes by that stage in the game, and you kind of get a feel of whether they're close or far away or shallow or deep. And so I turn on the TV, and what do they show? The skyline of San Francisco, and that is the skyline that was in my dream. But because I had only been there, and because I had only been there one time, I couldn't recall the skyline. And so I was totally freaked out over that. So last summer, I started having similar premonitions. I was starting to meditate. When I'm in the shower, I sit. I don't stand. And I often do meditations because I like the hot water pouring over me and not being submerged in it kind of takes my mind to another place. And I started having visions of another flood. And then I started having visions of a garden that was walled in. And at first, the garden, there was no flowers on the plants. And that bothered me because I knew something was wrong, right? The earth wasn't recovering. Without the flowers, there was no food, right? Because the fruit comes from the flowers of any plant. And every morning for like 2 weeks, I would sit there and meditate, and this vision would pick up where it left off from when I was doing it the previous day. And it was so disturbing to me, but at some point, probably about a week in, I started seeing the flowers, and then I started seeing the insects. And I knew then that the earth was going to recover from this. And at first, when I visualized the garden, it was all walled in. And then when I started seeing the insects and flowers, I could see an opening in the brick wall. But I was afraid to walk to that opening and see what was outside of the wall. And I got so freaked out by these visions, I stopped meditating in the shower because I was afraid to see what was next. And I only told one person about these visions, but that's when I drew the map. And I drew the areas of the map that will survive, that will be above the flood line. One place.
Wow. How can you not think about what you don't want to see when you know that you don't want to see it, and every time you think of not thinking about it, you're seeing it?
Do you know that I stopped meditating because of these visions? I have not started. This was probably in July or August of last year. And I am afraid to start meditating again because I am afraid the visions are going to come. My premonitions, for the most part, have happened when I was asleep. It is the rare occurrence that I will have a premonition when I'm awake. And these visions were so strong because usually when I meditate, I don't get premonitions or visions. And I could not shake this. And I still cannot bring myself to this day to start meditating out of fear that I'm going to see the rest of this play out.
Well, guess what is happening just in time for your visions? According to several websites, they were wrong. 12/21/12 wasn't the end of the world. It's 12/21/20.
And you know what? I don't think it's going to be the end of the world. I think it's going to be the end of the world as we know it, right? And the world is going
they
to...
made a song about that.
What's that?
But wouldn't that be ironic as if
It's
2020...
the end of the world as we know it,
right.
and I feel fine.
As if 2020 wasn't bad enough, we're going to end the world on 12/21/12. As we know it, with some kind of apocalypse. So what a grand ending to such a horrible year. But anyway, I'm not sure why they're saying that. Somebody told me about this last week, a couple days ago. And
it's a wonderful year. This is the year we realize that everybody's connected.
So apparently,
I've had a strong sense since last
before.
summer that something's going to happen before the end of 2021.
Okay, so let me tell you what I'll give you a report and then we'll talk about it some more. Apparently Saturn and Jupiter are going to be a very close alignment, and it hasn't happened since 1623, the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. And so you want to look at the skies.
Wow.
They come really close. Here's a picture here. And they're like almost on top of each other.
Lined up.
They're going to line up. They're not going to be a single star, but somewhere it said that.
Is the moon in the 7th house and Jupiter collides with... Oh, no,
but not
really?
Not Mars. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Well, this could be it. There it is. It gets so close. I'll get these pictures and I'll put it on my site. So on AquarianRadio.com, you can look at this alignment. And somewhere somebody, this biblical guy, said that's why they thought that was the Star of Bethlehem. It was on top of each other.
Now, Jesus was born in Galilee, not Bethlehem.
Well, whatever. Maybe the Star of Galilee, wherever it was.
You guys know
anyway, so
that star is in the sky right now. I received a video from somebody. Are you aware of that? Yeah.
Well, send me the video. I'll put it on the page.
Far out.
Here, it was posted. I'm going to do it right now. It was posted on my Stitch Witch Hour thing. Here. I'm going to send it to you.
Okay.
I'll send it.
Back, but I'm on another thing.
Oh, shoot. Hold
on.
Good.
Yeah. We're tying it together. So this really is the end of the world. And your visions are coming true, but, oh my God. Anyway, and right before 9/11, I was in a coma for 2 days. I mean, I wouldn't let Sasha take me to the hospital because I kept saying, no, there's something going on. I just got to keep getting it. And I literally came out of my coma, walked downstairs, and the Twin Towers were falling. And then years later, we were talking with my friend Jaiya, and she said she was in a coma for 2 days before 9/11 happened.
As soon as I heard that, Cheney did it. I know. Cheney and Bush did it.
So you don't think okay, so let's get back. You said you thought something might happen before the end of 2020. What's your prediction?
What's it might happen?
Let Debra.
I think 2021. It's going to happen before the end of 2021. There's going to be something that impacts the Earth and does the same thing again. And I started, the other thing, I think I told you this about 4 years ago, I started having premonitions about food shortages. That's what made me accelerate my gardening and my urban farming and growing seeds, right? Growing food for seeds, because I knew this was going to be needed. And look what's happening. The food shortages have started. This isn't the end of it. This is only the beginning.
Wow.
This is the beginning of the end. So I just scrolled to this site called Bro Bible, BRO.com, and it says it's going to happen on December 21st, 2020. The Mayans now reorganizing and saying this certainly would be the end of the world as we know it. See, we just said that, and then I scrolled to a site and it's saying the end of the world as we know it. Isn't that interesting? Anyway, I don't know why this Bible guy thinks it's going to be apocalypse, but he thinks it's going to be devastating. But there's no, I mean, just because those two stars are in alignment doesn't mean that's not going to have a major gravitational pull that will make the.
Did you get the video that I sent you?
No, I've got to navigate to that. I mean, let me go there.
Look under your Janet.
Playing a bit.
Your Janet Lessin Skype. That was sent to me by my ex-co-host Tallahassee about an hour before we got on the show. He filmed it last night.
Can you put that in this chat? Can you put it in this chat? We can't.
Yeah, I'll do it right now.
Let me see it in this chat. I'm afraid of navigating away and then I'll lose the show because I don't know what I'm doing.
So what's really there's great instability right now in Antarctica. Thwaites and a couple of other glaciers, each the size of Maryland, are approaching a place where they are going to make a great big wave, and patterns of waves will interact. Any one of these, and they're moving faster and faster, and they're being undermined by running fresh water. And it's very dynamic. Have fun while you're still alive, people.
If I open this video, would we hear it on the radio?
I don't know. I think you'll hear it, but I don't know if the rest of us will hear it. I think there's something in Skype.
Let me open.
Yeah, you can try it. It's just a video of the star that he shot over a couple of minutes. And he said this rose in the east, and he said this is what's referred to as the Star of Bethlehem.
Oh, okay. Let me see if maybe listeners can't hear it, but.
Oh, that was the other unfinished thing.
Oh, here it is.
This about Joseph taking his family to Jerusalem for some census. They didn't do censuses. The Romans didn't do censuses in Palestine in those days. It's all made up stuff.
So who's making up this
stuff?
Paul
made it up. He's trying to dress it.
Paul, why are you doing that, Paul?
He wants to fit into the Roman world.
So they made up stuff back then.
Yeah.
I was making up.
Most of the Christian holidays are actually based on pagan holidays. And the Romans were pagans at the time, right? And they were trying to draw the pagans into the Christian church. So they modified the holidays to it being more accepting to them. The other thing I learned is the Essenes practiced the dietary restrictions of the Jews. And that was one of the big battles with the Roman Catholic Church because the Romans didn't think the pagans would join the church if they had to stick to those dietary restrictions. And that was a huge battle between Paul and James. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the things that created the division. And when the Romans really took control and pushed James aside.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Now, when I played that, you couldn't see the video, right?
No, I couldn't see it. But you can post it on Aquarian Radio for people to see.
I will. I will grab that and post it. So, now I'm trying to get back to this screen. Let's see if this is it. Nope. Anyway, I'm kind of lost now, but we can keep talking. Okay, so
the premise, Janet, what's happening is you and I must also be seeing what's behind the wall, and these inductions that I've been giving to you, Debra. What do I see behind the wall? Let's imagine that the big wave is coming. What does each of us do?
There's 3 areas of the country where people will be safe. One is the Adirondacks in upstate New York. The other is the Rocky Mountains around Denver, Colorado. And the third is in northern, it's from the coastline in the Gulf will move up to northern Arkansas, so around Eureka Springs and the Ozarks. Those are the 3 areas of the country that are going to survive this flood.
Where are you right now? You're in Texas, right?
Yeah, I'm in Texas. We just went to the doctors for my brother, his first oncologist report. I don't know if people are aware, my brother was just diagnosed with stomach cancer, and he is only 55 years old.
Whoa.
Whoa, how's he doing?
He's doing remarkably well. They actually caught the cancer by accident on a fluke, and they caught it in stage 2, and the doctors are giving him a very good prognosis and believe this is survivable for him with a decent quality of life.
Are they going to cut out an area of his...
They're going to cut out all of it. That's what they're trying to talk him into. He's not buying into that. I have gotten him to incorporate the whole food concept and natural medicinal medicines incorporated with the Western medicine treatment that he's going to receive. I didn't think he would be open to it. I was afraid. But I brought all of my seed library down here where I'm going to plant a whole food garden for him. So it exists beyond me when I go back to upstate New York and plant my crops for the coming season.
Wow. I think that another thing is you've given him a wonderful focus of nurturing the plants that will be saving his life. It's beautiful. Right. It's a great circle.
Yeah.
Now, is he older or younger than you are?
He's 3 years younger than me.
Oh, wow. So, are you guys getting along?
Yeah, no, I literally dropped what I was doing. I was actually in the process of getting my online retail stores up and going for my clothing lines. And I had to put everything on hold because I came down here to take care of him. He's about to start his chemotherapy and radiation, and he's going to need someone round the clock with him to help take care of him. And so I volunteered to do that. He was actually kind of surprised that I did. So I've kind of put my life on hold for the next 6 months so that I can help him through this.
Can you lift him? Are you strong enough to lift him?
I don't know, right? I'm in really good shape. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. We're hoping that he's not in such bad shape that it's going to require me to move him. But I do have, 3 brothers in the area who are fairly strong. And if I need it, they're going to come help.
Oh, that's wonderful. So that's where you will be if the things happen now.
Yes.
So you're going to be in Texas. Are you above the floodline?
Not right now, but I am only about 5 hours from a safe spot. And I have been telling all of my friends about this to make sure you're within a few hours of a safe spot, right? Because it will give you enough time to get there. I have a bug out bag in my car. And I have all my seeds with me. The only thing I took with me when I left was my seed library.
If people are at sea, I imagine if Noah could survive with a boat, people could survive at sea.
There's going to be survivors, without a doubt, but there is going to be a large loss of life.
Yeah.
Well, we're here in Hawaii. I heard that it rises, but it's going to be turmoil while it's doing its thing.
See, in real existentialism, or even in winking in and out, is you die every second and you're reborn in the next second when you imagine yourself. And so you die. You're constantly dying, so get used to it.
Well, people need to understand that there's nothing to be afraid of. I was having a conversation with my sister-in-law last night about these beliefs because she is a devout Christian. And we talked about Genesis and one of the statements where it says, and God said, let me make man in my image. And I looked at her and I said, you realize that's not what the original texts say, the ancient texts say. And she said, no. And she said, what do they say? And I said, it says, let us make Adamu in our image. And she didn't know what Adamu was, which was first man. And I said, who's us? And what the F is R? Right? And she's sitting there looking at me with these big eyes. And I said, if you do not believe me, go do your own research. And you will find that they took the original ancient texts and changed them. And I could tell that it planted a seed in her. Like, she did not have this knowledge, as most Christians don't have this knowledge. They are taking the Bible at face value.
Oh, that's wonderful. See, what happens, the intellect can't ignore something it learned, and everything's going to unwind with that little thing you gave her. That's great. That's wonderful.
Yeah, she's too smart for it to not go in. Yeah.
Right? Because I had this same conversation with my ex-co-host who sent me this video, and it was last year. And he kept preaching to me about, well, Genesis says this and the Bible says this. And I'm like, hold it. Let me explain to you that those texts have been changed. That's not what it means. And I challenged him to go research the ancient texts, and he did. And he realized I was telling the truth. And now we have different conversations. He has now opened himself up to the possibility and no longer believes that the words on the pages of that Bible at face value. He's now beginning to question it. And him and his wife are now on this mission to get to the truth, right? And this is what I tell everybody. Don't just believe it because it's in the Bible. I personally feel like the Bible has been the biggest lie that's been perpetuated on humanity, right? And we need to question.
One of the worst things about it, my colleague Chris Hardy has analyzed this, is the woman hating that's built into the Bible. It's a misogynist text.
Yes.
Parts, you can tell, parts of it have been, especially have been written in the revisions, and everything that goes wrong is blamed on women. It's just like, it's this disgusting.
Wow. Now, I had a couple things that were kind of apocalyptic. When I moved to Oahu back in '93, I had a vision of the wave coming over, and it was, these buildings were giant in Oahu. I lived in a 40-story tall building, but it was going over them. And we were in a little church up on Diamond Head, and all of a sudden, the waves were coming, and all of a sudden this dome appeared over us, and it hit the dome, but the dome was, pretty high up because, the buildings are 40 stories high, and we were all saved from this being washed away and drowned. So that was interesting. Now, of course, we could do dream analysis. Water is overwhelm of emotions, right? But what is it personal? What is it prophetic? So I don't know what that was about. And then when I was living in State College, I had this vision where I was climbing a mountain, and I was carrying a pet carrier, and I didn't know where I was. It was like I had joined my form mid-stride, right? I'm in my future self climbing a mountain. And I looked down at the pet carrier, and it's a cat. And I said, well, I myself at that time, I have a little dog. I had a little Shih Tzu. I go, well, this isn't my dog. Who am I carrying? And where am I going? And as I was asking the questions, they said, well, get to high ground. And when you get high enough, we'll be able to, the rapture, beam you up into the craft. And I said, okay, I'll go. And then I stopped and I said, wait, I don't want to survive and everybody else I know die. Just let me die too. Everybody will be gone. I don't want to be the lone survivor. And they said, well, what you can do is we will rescue everybody you love. And I said, okay, well, I will learn how to love everybody so you rescue everybody. No one left behind. So I've been working my whole life
wow,
to come into
far out.
samadhi, unconditional love for humanity. And I think on some level I do love everybody.
Wow.
I have this understanding of the human condition and that we're in this passion play, and sometimes we play, Hitler, and sometimes we play Jesus and everything in between. But what I learned from my wonderful teacher husband, Dr. Lessin, which helped me get my head around this, he said love and involvement are two different things. Because the thought of to love somebody I had to be involved with, like the Hitler personality, and like that's too horrendous. I can't be around abusive behavior. But if I can love without involvement, sure, I can love everybody. So I think that's our ultimate goal, is to learn to love everybody, but don't allow yourself to be abused. You have to love yourself, and, you can't sit there and let somebody, hurt you, because your temple and your person is just as valuable as anybody else's. What were you going to say, Sasha? I saw you with all kinds of thoughts. What about you, Debra? He's drawing a blank.
Well, I mean, I feel like in part of my journey, it's very similar to yours, is I have a tremendous compassion to love that I didn't have when I was younger. Right? All the people that have wronged me, or all the things that have happened, I try to find the compassion in the situation, right? Instead of being angry, trying to understand the other side, right? Because in any situation, there's always multiple sides or multiple facets to it. And nothing is ever what it seems. And that's the one thing I've learned in life, both in business and personally. Nothing is ever what it seems on the surface. It's why I always tell people to dig and look below the surface. And I think most people are afraid. Right? Most people don't want to know the truth. Most people don't want to know the truth. People prefer to live in denial. It's one of the reasons why I don't share my premonitions. My family thinks I'm crazy because I can forgive people who have wronged me, like in very brutal ways, very harsh ways. But one of the things I learned about forgiveness, it's not for them. It's for you.
Right.
Yeah. It's, and basically, since we all, in a way, carry the deeds of our ancestors, we ultimately need to forgive everybody our ancestors have harmed, and be forgiven for what we and our genetics did to them and their genetics, because these things keep poisoning us now. So let's get over it and apologize to each other and realize we're brothers now. I tell you, as an old anthropologist, the way it really works is when people get to know each other and they have little nieces and nephews together, and then they don't want to be enemies because they have these little kids they all love.
Well, I think it was Barry, the guest we had, I think it was last week we had Barry, and what Barry said was the way we're going to stop this division is let's focus on what we agree on and not on what we don't agree on, right? Forget all the things we don't agree on, right? Find the things we agree on and start with that.
Oh yeah, and that's right. I wanted to go back. This is what I kept trying to bring out again is, organized religion, in a way, rips people off and so forth. But the other thing, because I went to everybody's churches and stuff, is there's something really genuine that happens, which is people have real spiritual connectedness with each other when they sing together. You also have it when you row canoe together, but it's there and it's really nice. And so that gets all confused with give us money and don't listen to anybody else. But there's still a genuineness that it's worth bringing internally instead of externally.
what were we talking about right before that? I agree with that, but I had something I wanted to add to the conversation. What was the last thing we said before? Oh, I once went to a Marianne Williamson. She came to Maui, and she was down at the Maui Arts and Cultural Center, which holds, 600 to 1,000 people or something like that. And she had, pretty full house. And what she had a bunch of people do is she had everybody stand that was of Native Hawaiian lineage or had some kind of Native Hawaiian lineage. And then she had somebody volunteer that was of some other heritage to stand in front of those, and they held each other's hands and they looked at each other's eyes. And so on behalf of everybody, we all forgave everybody for the harm we did to the indigenous peoples, to the native people that were here before, to any harm that anybody did in the name of the differences in races. And I'll tell you, it was such a beautiful exercise. And, if you weren't actually doing it, you were close enough to witness. Everybody was dispersed around, so you were part of that energy. And there was not a dry eye in the house. Everybody was wiping their eyes, and some people were sobbing. And I think in some way we call that a puja. And it would be nice to do a global puja, because we've had, a horrendous time the last 4 years because the race has, well, actually, if you go back with the birtherism, racism has been on the rise. We seem to be getting past it, at least my perception as a soul going through the earth experience, that when I was a child, I was the daughter of racists, and I saw the name calling and prejudice, and I watched my parents as they kind of moved past it and got over it. And we watched the news and, Martin Luther's assassination and I was in Pittsburgh and race riots, and we just seem to be starting to really move past it. Now, maybe it's just me because I went away from a world where it was so polarized, black, white, and I moved intentionally to a part of the world where there were many colors. People here in the Hawaiian Islands, you see everybody because it's a global tourist destination. And when you go to the beaches, you hear almost every language. If you're walking through the beach, you hear all these languages and, German and things that I couldn't even begin to identify what language what it is. And there was a story the other day where there were two women and they were talking Spanish in a grocery store, and they got arrested or something as being, immigrants hiding. And it's like, no, we were born here. We just are bilingual and we like to speak Spanish sometimes. And I saw the story, the other side, and of course they were set free and no fines. And, it was ridiculous how ridiculous our world has gotten that we're going to, try to send somebody out of the country just because we're speaking a second language. And when I was growing up, our grandparents were the immigrants. This is the 1950s America, and many of them were speaking other languages, and they, the children were raised to speak English, and so it was a shame that those children weren't raised to be, bilingual, because that would have, I guess, when you have two languages or more, you kind of expand your mind and you get intelligent. So that was a shame. But there was a shaming of, fitting in, but it'd be nice if we embraced that diversity and then everybody learns more than one language, So I just wanted to add that.
I believe the answer to a lot of our societal ills can be found in embracing indigenous cultures. They lived lives of balance, and our life is completely out of balance. And they had tremendous knowledge, ancient medicinal knowledge that I think is extraordinarily important. We as a species are sick from our food supply chain, from Western medicine, from our disconnection in our spiritual beliefs. And look at what happened to the indigenous culture. right? They were a prelude of what was going to happen to us. And now we need to learn from who they were, because they're returning back to their native roots. And personally, I think we need to follow them.
When I was a child and I would go hiking through the forest in Pennsylvania, there was a really beautiful forest when I was a child, and we would take bike hikes, and probably a lot of it's gone with housing, but back then they existed. And we would happen upon these mounds, and we had no education in our schools about the mounds that the Native Americans left. But when we would find these, they were taller than we were. They were really high, and we weren't going to climb them. We just would circle around them, and we looked at each other. There was I had a little girl gang, and 12 of us, and we were going, what in the world is this? But we could feel that it was sacred, and we knew there was something there. And it's a shame if we could, present in school the heritage and histories of all these peoples, not just the perspective of the settlers that came over from Europe. It would be very enriching.
Okay, I have to say something. You just opened the door to something I want to say. I am so sick and tired of seeing these white politicians on TV, including the president, screaming about how they're trying to erase our culture. I got news for everybody. Unless your skin is red or brown, you are either an illegal immigrant or descended from an illegal immigrant. And our culture is nothing to be proud of. We stole this land and then committed genocide on the indigenous people. And it's time we right those wrongs, start giving them their land back, and start embracing their culture. I will shut up now. We have 15 minutes left.
No, I totally agree. I think that we need to really do something on the level of reparations to bring the health facilities and fresh, all the amenities of being a person, and it's not just started from here. It's like make up for this, give Georgia back to the Cherokee people.
Do you know the Cherokees are the only one that managed this virus correctly? Have you guys read what the Cherokee Nation has done? They have the lowest infection rate of any group or any city or state in this country. They were very proactive in managing this virus, making sure they had resources for this people, and they're doing extensive contact tracing. So they're nipping these micro breakouts that occur before they explode into something they can't control. We could all take a lesson from the Cherokee Nation right now on how to manage this virus.
Yeah, there was an article, I think you sent it to me, that it was in the United States in December of 2019. So we really need to look at that story of what happened, because when the story broke in January, I was right away saying, wear a mask. And poor Sasha was going, well, nobody's wearing it. I'm the only one out there. I said, I don't care. Wear a mask. And I called my friends I'm psychic too. They were going to a conference in, where was it? Santa Clara. And I said, there's a virus. Wear a mask. And they're going, nobody's wearing a mask. What, are you crazy? And that was apparently one of the first deaths was in Santa Clara, California, where this conference was. And the woman that was running it was coughing the whole time and sneezing and choking. And she went to the hospital after the conference. So we didn't know enough about it back then. So, yeah, I think we could have, I remember Trump saying, there's only one. This will be done in a couple weeks. It'll be over. But if we really would have paid attention early on, we wouldn't have, 265,000 dead now? Dead. Not just sick, dead. Millions infected. And it's not over. So that's insane.
So we basically got to get rid of this stupid pipeline that goes from Canada to Mexico to the Gulf, and stop polluting the water and leave stuff in the ground that's in the ground,
And that's as soon as possible. We just have to stop this flowing of oil and the fracking, which is the stupidest procedure.
Well, we have to.
I hate to say it, but the president-elect is better. I want him to be take care of this stuff very quickly and decisively.
Well, we have to insist on it because this demonization of words, like they demonize progressive, and it's like, yeah, I'd like us to make progress. What's wrong with the word progressive? If we don't progress, we're going to be dead as an entire species, and probably every species on this frickin' planet. And, liberal, they've demonized it. Socialism. There's 75, 100 socialistic programs. I was talking to Russell Brenninger. Yeah, my brother was in his socialist Navy, and I went to my socialist grade school, and I had my Social Security as I drive my socialist bus, to get to my job. And there's so many socialist programs. It's like the United States is founded on socialist programs. It's like, what is this with the demonization of words? And it's all about seizing power and taking control and manipulating and mind controlling just disgusting. So we need to take back the English language and start saying, no, that's not true. You've hijacked a major word, and so you've hijacked our psyche by hijacking our words. And we're going to take back the original meaning, just like the Bible. They took all that stuff and they twisted the Bible. So a bunch of twisters. So who's doing this? I don't know. I keep telling everybody, they go, oh, Trump won. He won. I said, this is the blue-red game. And it goes back to the Anunnaki, and they've always done divide and conquer. Whoever's in control of the planet has always divided and conquered us. And that politicians and politicians are designed to have governments which steal from the people. It's all reverse Robin Hood, give to the rich, and it ends up we die en masse, and we end up being corporate economic slaves. So yes, we've got to do something. We can't. We're so traumatized from Trumpism. We need to take back our reality and get back to how can we distribute wealth so that there are no hungry people on this entire planet. We've got to stop destroying our rainforests and this whole global changes that are devastating this planet. I think we can do it. I know we can do it, but we don't have much time. And now we're just going, it's like we just escaped the boogeyman. But now we've got to take back our reality and say, let's fix this planet. Because my secret space program people that have gone to the future, they say by 2150, it's over. Game over. Everybody's got cancers and radiation and they're dead or dying. And by 2100, Earth is devoid of life. All this beautiful diversity like no other planet in existence is wiped out. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a pretty, if you wrap your head around that vision, and I did see that type of apocalyptic vision when I was on board a ship when I was 4. And they showed me, this is where you can go if you choose it. So we're co-creating this. Debra, your turn. Us pissing off people because we're different thinkers here on our shows. We think differently. We're the other end of the continuum. But go ahead, Debra.
Someone got mad and chatsy in my genocide comments about what the whites did in this country. So
it's just the truth, like what Thanksgiving. You know what Thanksgiving was? The settlers they gave thanks to the germs that killed the Indians and the massacre that they had just they wiped out a people. They didn't come as settlers; they came as colonists to kill the people that were here and enslave them. And that's what Thanksgiving. The story that's told about Thanksgiving is bullshit. It's not about lovey-dovey. Okay. It's about we just killed the Indians.
No, I have to go back in time to my own DNA, and I literally have I descended from the people who came over in the Mayflower and the Thanksgiving is part of my story. And then the other side of my family, they went to the Virginia colony. So we go back on both sides to these early, maybe my ancestors were all a bunch of assholes, but maybe not. And I've been researching the story, and I really don't have the full story except some Hollywood dramatizations about what happened. And it's just like, what happened with Jesus, we don't have the real story. So, but we can forgive each other because we don't know the story. We're never going to know the story unless we get some kind of time machine. What do you think? We have 5 minutes. So I don't know. I don't think my ancestors all came over to kill, murder. I think they were escaping some things that they didn't like. Because to come over here, I watched this one series about the Virginia colonies, and the women that were coming over were escaping horrendous conditions where they were living in Europe, and they agreed to be these mail order brides just to escape what was going on there. So we don't know.
Their intentions are manifest in their results. They and the people that descended from them killed off the Indians and drove them off their land, and broke every treaty they ever made with them. And you can whitewash that as much as you want. But I'm thankful for still having wise Native American elders to give us some guidance now when we really need it.
Yeah, we have Native American friends. What I'm just saying is, I don't know what I was going to say. We don't know what happened, and some of the story was, we don't know. But okay, what I was going to say is, we have a president that does all this shit. Do we blame every citizen for what the people at the top do? No, there's a caste class thing which apparently was established by the Anunnaki, and the people in power were of the bloodline, and the people of the bloodline would do horrendous things. And there was lots of genocide and maintaining these fake religions, which went around, these whole stories. I have no idea that they go down to Peru and take all the gold and get all the, I don't know. There's these stories. Apparently some is true, but what is a true story? So I'd like to see the time machine so I can go back and look at it in person. But I'd like to forgive each other. Apparently the purpose of all these stories is to learn, grow, evolve, become conscious, and learn to love each other unconditionally.
It's not just forgive, because you are them.
Right.
You are them. Whatever you think they did that's junk, you did it.
There you go. Okay, Debra, we got 3 minutes. You want to take the final words? We've talked a lot.
Final words, right? I was speaking to a friend in Pakistan, and he wished me happy Thanksgiving. And I had to download him a little bit because I don't celebrate Thanksgiving for the exact reason of what Dr. Lessin was talking about. I call it, the following day after Thanksgiving is now Native American Day, right? Where we acknowledge the place of Native Americans in the history of this country. And it's about time we start doing that. My hope is that the Native American tribes in this country will open up their culture and allow others, non-Native Americans, access and teach us, because I believe they have a lot to offer us. I pass the stick.
That would be great. What do you learn from your Native American friends, honey? You said you have some friends that you.
What my friend among the Zuni tells me is how as they migrated to the south after they'd been in the Four Corners area, they would leave some people behind the trail with instructions of how to get there and teach whatever they had learned from the people there. Then some of them would move on, and they brought their whole culture by having leading people along the way to teach the other people. What an image of taking wisdom and spreading it and It's totally beautiful. That's the kind of things we can. And these kids learned them when they were little. They memorized all these dances. They didn't even know what it meant. And then as they grew old and became educated, they understood what it was. It was a map of how people can get along and spread the goodness and evolve.
And that's the end of our show. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Much love and blessings and Lois. Thank you, Debra. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, listeners. Take care. Love and aloha. Blessings. Goodbye.
Yes.